Start off this morning by taking that down and showing you a little trailer from the film Salad Days, which some of you may be familiar with, and in case you're not, you can become a little more familiar.
Please don't turn them up. No light show tonight, please. This is perfect, just like this. Can everybody see me just fine? And then whoever's working the lights, just leave them be, brother or sister.
I had heroes that I would get nervous around, you know? Like I know that Ian is a normal dude, or HR, or whatever. They're just normal dudes. Those fucking people changed my life.
DC is a small city of 400, 500,000 people. The industry is government.
So the thing about Washington is that it's a petri dish of great ideas. They may not be sustainable, but you can always grow something here because nobody's looking.
We're proud as hell of the fact that what's coming out of this town is good. When you think about, what kind of a town Washington, D.C. was at that point, that was kind of a remarkable thing. And we knew it. Everyone knew it.
Just brilliant, energetic, creative people. And no one seems intent on having a career of any kind.
So that is a trailer for the film that I made with a friend of mine, Scott Crawford. I'd like to start with a quote from a review from the British music publication NME just a couple weeks ago. I like this quote that they had. It's, after all, the idea that punk could be a learning experience or a path to self-improvement still feels, well, revolutionary. And that resonated with me. I made this film, as I said, with Scott, about 4 years, shooting, editing, producing it. And it was a huge labor of love. I mean, Scott and I grew up in this scene together. And I got involved not just because this music is very important to me and means a lot, but because the way I experienced it and when I experienced it just went a long way to shaping who I became, who I am. I was born here in D.C., grew up not far from here in the Maryland suburbs, still live out here. Have 7 older siblings that turned me on to all sorts of great music. We had the Beatles and the Stones and Dylan in the house, and my sister actually went to see the Beatles when they played here in D.C., and so it was a very musical, cultural environment. I don't really remember any of my siblings being into Lou Reed, but this record was in my house, and I just remember as a tween being really confused by looking at this record, and I didn't discover Lou Reed. I mean, I discovered Lou Reed on my own much later, but just the album covers and the art and just, you know, there was all this stuff in the house that just, you know, sucked me in. But it wasn't until I really discovered, you know, my own music that things really, you know, clicked for me. We used to go down to Georgetown in high school, and just to, I don't know, I guess it was different then or whatnot, but it was a little grittier. There was just like something, you know, you could always find something going on. So we ended up finding Rocky Horror Picture Show. You know, the movie was fine, you know, actually more men in fishnets, which, like, I don't know, it was a scene that was odd, but, you know, it was just different for us. But the coolest part about that is that before the movie played, they would have a DJ and they played music. And people would dance up in front of the stage, or the screen. And, you know, I was too young to get into dance clubs or whatever, so this was my first experience with, like, you know, basically hearing music and dancing to it, you know, outside of the home. And that was the first place I heard the Stranglers and the Clash and the Ramones and the Buzzcocks, and it was just immediately mind-blowing. I mean, you know, my friends and I went almost immediately to the record store, Joe's Record Paradise, and just started, you know, buying stuff. I think I remember I found a receipt, you know, 25 years later in a drawer that was for a couple of my early singles that I bought, and I bought 2 singles on this one receipt. It was "Don't You Want Me Baby" by the Human League and "Nazi Punks Fuck Off" by the Dead Kennedys. And I was in, you know, I mean, I just was like, this stuff is, you know, bring it on. I was like a sponge. So at the same time I was discovering this music, this underground music that was exciting me, I was also discovering photography. Took a class in high school. It was just, I was redefining my world through this lens, and sort of this music was my soundtrack to that. This was like probably my 3rd show maybe that I went to. It was a hardcore matinee. It was at the old 930 Club, and it was a way for, I mean, it was interesting that it was when the club was dark, you know, on a Sunday afternoon. The kids went to the club and said, we want to put on shows, we want to see bands, we're too young to, you know, get into clubs, and they went for it. It was a great thing to do for teenagers on a Sunday afternoon. I mean, whether you were playing in the bands or just going to see the bands, between bands you would talk to people and you would get someone's fanzine, or someone would give you their tape or their book of poetry, or they'd have a shirt that they made themselves. It was just very creative and very inspiring. The last show that I probably saw before this show was probably like Springsteen or something at like the Capitol Center, which was like the old Verizon Center. That's what going to live music meant for me, and this was like an incredibly different experience. Like, you could get on stage and sing at the show. You couldn't do that at the Capitol Center, and it was a communal experience, and I think that was as important as the music. You could jump on the singer. It was encouraged, actually. This is on stage at Wilson Center. Like, the mic is gone. Like, everyone's just singing and having an awesome time. And in the extras, Ian talked about this in the movie. It didn't actually make the movie, but it made the extras, and I just want to show you this short clip about this that will be on the extras when the DVD comes out in the fall. There's another one of him getting everyone involved.
And all I ever wanted then and now is to get the whole room singing. So I felt like if I'm going to be in Minor Threat, I remember really sing. And I remember I'd put the mic out, but I always sang. I never did, I used to see bands, they go, and they wouldn't sing, and I always sing no. Now you're, you fucked up. Because you're not, we're all singing. Yeah. As soon as I see someone put the mic out and not sing, then they're leading. They're no longer in the music anymore.
So it was infectious. Going to these shows is all we wanted to do. We were waiting for the next one. I went to just about every show in the early 80s, and it really, the people you were with and the experience you were having was as important as the music. It was a joyous communal experience, and it was palpable. And so we wanted to have shows, and it was difficult because everyone was pretty much under 21. There were places like this. This was Space 2 Arcade. It was one of those weird restaurants on North Capitol Street that sells Chinese food and fried chicken and subs and and everything. But they had a back room that they would rent out. There were a lot of, this is Marginal Man. There were a lot of shows that we had there, but a lot of people would make fake IDs just to get into shows. We weren't really interested in some people were interested in drinking, but a lot of people weren't. DC Space was another awesome place that was all ages, pretty early on. I believe they were. Some shows were, at least. And, I saw Jim Carroll read poetry there. They always had art on the walls. Just a great place. So there was this problem, and the kids in DC really, it's all the DIY thing. They saw a problem with not being able to put on, get to shows all the time. So they went to the clubs and had an idea for a fix. And there's this clip from the film. It was a radical notion. These kids saw a problem, and they took action, and they made a change. I mean, the clubs are still, most of the clubs you don't want to go to see a band are still all ages today because of this. They were like popcorn laws or whatever they found out about if you sold food, then underage people could come into your establishment and stuff, and it was pretty radical. It was somewhat, even you could say, a revolutionary notion to go against your peers and everyone wanting a party, and they just wanted to see bands, and they made a change. Now everyone wasn't straight edge. I mean, I was, just because I just wasn't really that interested in partying. This stuff was exciting enough. Taking pictures, going to see bands, it was, giving me what I needed. People did have their views about straight edge. This is a short clip on that. So I just started taking more and more photos, photographing all these shows, then wanted to share the photos. So I started a fanzine. My first one, I did a couple of issues. It was called Zone 5. Mainly photographs, some interviews. It was it was really the only way to find out about stuff without the internet and whatnot. Like Thurston Moore did a comprehensive scene report from New York. It had, every club in the city and every band at the time, and a few lines describing each one. It was like, it was an awesome blog, would be, now. So I produced this, distributed it, sold it through independent record stores and bookstores. Then in the 90s, I did another one that was more culture, did fiction, interviews with authors. We interviewed David Sedaris when he was still cleaning apartments in New York. Did that interview with Ian. Got a nice card from his mother on that one that said it's one of her favorite interviews that she ever read with him. I kept that card. I still have it. I think probably because I asked him if he was ever going to have kids or something. You don't see that in like too many punk rock interviews. So you gotta have kids, But it was, and then I it was really Xerox and Stable. I ended up getting them printed later, but it was really labor intensive. And ended up being, the Uno Mas one ended up being a website in the later 90s that I kept going for a while until I stopped. So then I was just emboldened by this whole scene. Everyone was doing something, and I was taking pictures, and I was taking some college courses in photography, and I was like 21, and I just called the Washington Post and was like, hey, can I come in and like show you some of my pictures? I didn't go for the news desk so much because I didn't really do news. I did more entertainment stuff. So I called like the weekend section and the style section. So I get an interview, and luckily the guy knows music. Like he recognizes Dee Dee Ramone in my portfolio, and he recognizes John Cale too, which was, I know a lot of people know who John Cale is, but whether you could pick him out of a lineup in the 80s, like I don't know. But he's like, oh, John Cale, and I'm like, yeah. So he gives me a chance, and he gives me assigns me the front cover of the weekend section of the Washington Post. And the Post had like 750,000 circulation maybe in the 80s. Like everyone, looked at the weekend section to see what was going on, on the weekend stuff. So for my first assignment, it was the cover and then all the stuff inside. The assignment was piano bars, and not only piano bars, but piano bars where you were encouraged to sing along with the performer. So another communal singing event, I could get behind this, they were singing Billy Joel, not Minor Threat, but it was fine. The shoot went well. Started getting more work with the Washington Post, then the City Paper, then the Washingtonian, and made sort of a niche as far as like the arts community and stuff in DC. Continued taking photographs of bands. This was the Fugazi repeater cover, like without the words, more ass, less words on that one. And the 90s were a great time for taking pictures of music and bands. There was labels had money. This was the Beastie Boys at Madison Square Garden, where NME flew me and a writer up from here to photograph them. There was this was the Foo Fighters' probably their first official show in DC that I covered for the style section of the Post. It was always music. I shot a lot of Wilco. I worked on some of their documentaries. There was organizations like Americans for the Arts, advocacy groups, the Grammys, RIAA, a bunch of newspapers, magazines, stuff like this. The DC thing, celebrities go and lobby Congress for arts funding, a lot of grip and grin stuff, but it pays the bills, and I always shot video as well throughout the years. Before I edited and shot and edited this film, I worked on a lot of documentaries and the Burn to Shine series and the Wilco films and stuff. Never really had a plan, though. I just sort of went along and did the things I loved, and it basically worked out because it didn't seem peculiar because everyone was just doing, whether it was you were making a fanzine or you were in a band or you were booking a tour or you started your own record label and sold the stuff. Everyone was just doing something, so it made perfect sense to just do it yourself. Here's a clip from the film that talks a little bit about that. Well, actually, that's not. I actually got interested in Middle East politics, still am, and a bit of the 90s I traveled and worked for international magazines and newspapers. This was a UN school in the West Bank. These are some cats in Gaza. I just figure people like cats. This is Lebanon after the downtown Lebanon after the Civil War. Tobacco farmer in southern Lebanon, did some traveling. This was for a fact-finding mission that a senator from Ohio sent a group on to document labor and environmental abuses in Mexico because he opposed NAFTA. So I sort of got a little political. It seemed to a thing that DC punk rockers kind of did. It made sense, and I enjoyed the work. That's pretty much the crux. Like, creativity is normal. Like, we all just did what we were moved to do, and there's still a lot of these people are still, from back then are still, doing this stuff. So a few years back, I got kids now. They're 16 and 18 now, but this was a few years ago. They're like 12 and 15. They wanted to go see this band Modest Mouse. So, I take them to go see Modest Mouse. I like them as well. I actually like them more since my kids actually turned, me onto them. I mean, I knew them prior to them, but they were just like, you should really like this band, the song and stuff. And they actually turned me more onto them. So I'm just there hanging out, hanging back, watching the show, watching them watch the show. And, I see my older son, he was like 15 at the time. He's a quiet kid, kind of reserved. He starts talking to this other kid, and I don't really, he usually doesn't talk to people he doesn't know that, sometimes he doesn't talk to people he knows that much, but he's just like talking to this kid, and I can't really hear what they're saying because it's loud, but I'm getting a little bit like, they're kind of geeking on the music, like, oh, they didn't play that last song in 10 years, like the last, this other kid's like this, encyclopedic knowledge of, Modest Mouse. So they're like, yeah, and I'm like, oh, no way, man, so they're talking, so I'm thinking that's cool and stuff. And then they play a song that they both just love. I think it was off like the Lonesome Crowded West. I don't remember the actual song, but they play this song, and he just loses his shit, he's jumping up and down, he's banging into this other kid he just met, and he's like singing at the top of his lungs, like singing along, just yelling. And I'm just standing there thinking, like, I'm witnessing him discover the power of live music, of this communal experience. Like, he's getting it, and that's me at that hardcore matinee, and I still, I'm at shows even at 50 where I feel transcended. Like I still, when it's all right, you know, and I'm not too tired from standing up and, you know, my feet hurt and whatever, all that other bullshit, I still can be lifted by, you know, this joyous communal experience of live music. So he ends up, you know, my younger son is already a musician at this time. He's been playing drums for like 10 years. He started when he was like 5 or 6. He's already a pretty accomplished musician. But my older son, you know, decides, you know, he sort of defined himself as the music he liked, but he never played it so much. But then, you know, he started playing the bass, and then he picked up some other, you know, he just picked up a lot of different instruments, borrowed an accordion from someone, he played a little banjo, like, just started absorbing all this different stuff. And then him and some friends put a band together. Probably didn't want his little brother in the band, but the fact was he's a fucking kick-ass drummer, so he got him in there. They put out a record. He recorded a record, then they did a show. And then they did art and made a t-shirt and screened that themselves. Then they asked me if I still had that old Uno Mas domain name from when I did the magazine, and I did still have it. So they took that and they made like this arts collective where their friend, if they made a film, they could put that up there. If someone did poetry or poetry slam or their band, so it was, you know, art. So they started doing that. Then the 5th of this month, the same day the movie opened here at the AFI, they had organized this all-day music festival at the VFW Hall in Tacoma Park. And their band, Useless Grant, which the name grows on you, it's a pretty good name. It works on different levels. But so their band, Useless Grant, was the main band that organized this whole event. And it was 15 bands on like 2 stages. They designed the art and made a shirt and screened it themselves with all the bands on the back. They took donations. They made enough to like pay the sound guy, give some money to the VFW. They invited all their friends or anyone that wanted to come up on stage for the last song to sing along. It was packed. It was sweaty. Everyone was singing. It was a joyous communal event. It was just inspiring, you know, to see these kids doing this. So I know that kids are like, you know, starting bands in every city, all over the place, all the time. But I really think that something's unique about DC, that it just encourages people to do these things themselves and promotes creativity and self-respect. And this is really, you know, why I continue to do what I do and why I wanted to make that film. You know, the legacy of the DC punk scene in the 80s, I mean, they gave us a lot of great bands that people still listen to and enjoy today. I see kids with, you know, Minor Threat and Fugazi shirts on today. People still enjoy this, but I think more importantly, it left possibilities for young people to just do things for themselves and to be creative without worrying about what's cool or what's expected of them, and to just create on their own terms. So thanks for listening.
Thank you.